Each of you folks are leaders of organizations, of important strategies, of catalyzing aspects of our community. But first question I wanted to start really is, Hawaiʻi, who you and why do you do the work that you do? And it should always be ladies first, I think, right? Is that how it works?
Yeah, youngest first.
Youngest too, yes. Let's point that out. All the white in the beard.
It's a compliment. You guys are mature. I'm Meike Aloha Kako. I am a person that is shaped by the places that I've got to experience. I'd say I'm very shaped by Kona, by the forest, by the cycles, the really unique weather pattern of Kona that's consistent, driven by heat. I feel like that has shaped how I think, the decisions I make. And I'm shaped by my kumu in life, and I have mentors definitely in this room who have taught me and imparted knowledge upon me. And that's shaped my entire projection of life. And I think, getting away from your question probably, who am I? And my function, I think my function is I'm a bridger, or I serve as a bridge between maybe community and resource management at times, between community and agency sometimes, and sometimes between community and community as a facilitator, to bring hui and networks together, to learn from each other, because so much knowledge exists in community itself. Yeah, I'd say that's who I am.
Mahalo, Natalie, for sharing. Kili, you want to share who you and why you do the work, some of the work you do?
Sure. Well, aloha kakahi aka kākou. Mahalo for making it in this morning. We made it. Who am I and where am I from? Just like Natalie, the places that I've grown up in have definitely shaped me. I would call it a privilege that I did not necessarily grow up in one spot. I was born and raised at Kawela Bay on the North Shore, but because my mother was a single mother and she had to move for her jobs and her career, we had to move as a very small family unit several times throughout my childhood and high school experience. So. I like to say now that I'm privileged. It was a challenge growing up, having to make new friends. I went to 3 different elementary schools, so I had to make new friends, figure out the neighborhood dynamics in each location, moving from the North Shore around to Kailua. But each of our stops grew the bond between my mother and I stronger. That bond grew stronger, and I learned how, much like Natalie was, interesting our connection. I learned how to, number one, be a listener first. That way I could stay out of trouble a little easier. So I feel like I have good listening skills, and also I like to be, whether it's the glue or the connection between people, and to help find commonalities between people. I found that was an easy way to get along with the neighborhood, and it's now transitioned into my adult life as well. And so the work that I do now, and my inspiration was because of my connections through my friends, my very close high school friends, including Kamana and our tumultuous and mind-expansive time at UH, Hawaiian Studies, and dreaming about all the things that we wanted to see while we were living in Manoa, St. Louis Heights, getting into trouble.
It was regenerative.
It was regenerative. It's full circle. I love it. So mahalo to UH Hawaiian Studies. I can't wait for the graduates, 20 years from now who are in school right now.
Yeah.
Who are a part of Hawaiian Studies currently, and what they're going to be doing in 20 years from now. But yeah, I'm just a local boy from the Windward side. I call myself a Windward side rat. Ko'olau rat, just because it's been running up and down the windward side of Oahu all my life. And I love my mom, and I love my family.
Mahalo.
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 Wow. Well, aloha aina kākou. O Brandon Clint Ledward. Who am I? First and foremost, I'm the grandson of George Ledward and Ingeborg Siebenauger. I am the son of George and Marilyn Ledward. I'm a kane, or husband, to Kaila Puo'okalani Kikowski Ledward, and the father of 3 wonderful boys, Nalupi'o, La'akea, and Kaimana. Kailua is my home, so I'm a kamali'i of Ko'olau Poko. Just like both of our other panelists, the place has shaped me, even though I can no longer afford to live there, and I live in Honouliuli in Kapolei. The experiences I've had growing up on that side, swimming in the ocean, surfing, playing in the hills, exploring, what used to be a lot of open lots back then, really shaped, I think, who I became. I'm a proud I'm a proud graduate of our public school system. Don't use that in the promo. But yeah, I mean, I went to public school since elementary. Like my sister was the first to go to college in my family, thanks to funding from Kamehameha schools. Fell in love with cultural anthropology and learned a lot about Hawaiian culture, history, and language. And now working at Kamehameha schools, I get to kind of keep learning through the incredible community partners that we work with. I think one of my natural abilities is I'm an idea guy. I love to ideate. I see connections even where there probably aren't. But I think it makes for a more lively conversation. And the gifts that I hope to pass on is really simple. Staying curious about the world, recognizing you don't know everything. There's always something to learn. Being grateful for what you have, and understanding that came, as a gift. And being positive in spite of the many challenges that you call out, Kamana. I think there's so much to be positive for when you have a strong foundation of Ike Kupuna. So yeah, excited to have today's conversation.
Mahalo. Mahalo. Thank you, Brandon. So jumping a little more into our work and its relationship with circularity and some of the framing on the ancestral circular economy. Natalie, you want to kick us off with some of your work in agroforestry and resource management and some of the opportunities you think that are there that you see with the community and perhaps bridging with UH.
Sure. Kamana has this thing where he's like, magic happens when it's impromptu, so give me some time to stir the magic up.
I see it.
Is it happening? Maybe I'll just share. So I have the privilege to facilitate and kako'o a hui of mahiai, of agroforestry practitioners, of people who work towards Aina Momona. And these are all Native Hawaiian-led organizations, and we have about 14 across the Pai'aina, and we try to meet every 6 months. And this was born out of a need that they had expressed during a research project that as Native Hawaiian agroforestry practitioners, they felt like there was no safe space to learn from one another. And that often the narrative around agroforestry or permaculture, food forest cultivation is really dominated by a culture that's not theirs. So dominated by maybe like YouTube farmers or people who are new to this. But it really is, we all recognize that agroforestry is a traditional practice in Hawaiʻi and beyond. And we know from modeling that agroforestry probably produced about 30% of our food, a third of the food that we ate traditionally. So it was really, really important for a variety of reasons. Super diverse system where you had an overstory, could be native trees, so you're protecting that biodiversity. We have a mid-story, all different kind of species, food and non-food. So ava, tea, everything you need, valke for clothes. And then we have a ground cover story, an understory where you might have your kalo, your uala. You could have native, understory there that covers, covers soil, reduces erosion. You don't have to weed as often. I was thinking about it, it's its own cyclical system very much, where leaf litter feeds all the plants underneath, the nutrient cycles, the soil is protected, moisture cycles in itself in this system. And so, I went off on a tangent, but they were, all these agroforestry practitioners who are OEV were feeling like there wasn't this safe space. So we cultivate this space where they can learn from one another and just talk to one another, build that relationship, learn the practices that are working, that are not working, they're innovating. I think how you measure success in these types of groups is really difficult. But we're working on developing metrics that are from them. That agroforestry success cannot be. They don't relate to even the word agroforestry, but they don't relate to the metrics of success in grants from plants in the ground, or purely numbers visited. It's like, how much food are we providing our communities? How many kupuna are we feeding from this kalo that we're growing, or how many practices are being supported by the plants that we're growing, and those, all those services that are being provided ecologically and socially, trying to figure out from their point of view, what is success, what is thriving agroforestry, what is thriving systems of Aina. So that's just one example. I have a hard time with this circular economy term. Like, it doesn't really resonate with me. So I think just thinking maybe more, I'm so sorry I'm taking a lot of time, Kumana, but thinking, I had this image of a mauna. A mauna being the first thing that comes out of the ocean, that the first thing that's colonized with life by plants, by animals, that was able to support human life after that. And this mauna has its life cycle that we can see in the geologic age of our islands, right? And eventually it becomes more eroded, like Hawaiʻi, where you have more huge Hawaiʻi, supporting even more life, more diversity. And then at its end of its life, in Papahana Mokuakea, descending back down into the ocean and being an atoll and being that reef that supports all of our kupuna species up there, the most diverse marine system. And I see that maybe as this economy, this ancestral economy, that there is this life cycle that exists, that we have always known in Hawaiʻi, and that we can always look towards as an example. And when you think of the word mauna, like Aina, you guys have heard Aina, that which feeds, I and na being that, I forget what the grammatical term is, but that makes a noun out of a verb. Anyway, so I being the food and then na being okay, that's which feeds. Mauna, mau, persisting, na, so that makes it the noun. So it's that which allows persistence, that which persists. And like, I think for me, I always want to be a mauna. I want to be that which persists for our communities to continue to live, for that cyclical nature of life to continue to happen. But then in recognition that at the end of our life, we descend back down and we have a new function in the ocean. And that being the image that I see for circular economies, I guess we could say.
That's a good one. Mahalo. Mahalo, Natalie. And in talking about your work in agroforestry and those multiple kind of impacts, right, that work has, and how you develop metrics, I think that's super important, and that's sort of a part of this work, is to understand, the multitudes of impacts that these interventions are having, ecologically, environmentally, with community, with culture, with place. And we're gonna, when Kate talks about donut economics and sort of just looking at GDP and growth as one metric, I mean, this is a radical contrast and thing that we have to be mindful of. And it does remind me years ago, when I was young, like Natalie was, and I worked for Kamehameha Schools, I remember actually having to convince the trustees, and I'm not trying to throw anyone under the bus or anything, but I ran Aina Ulu, and a part of Aina Ulu was Paepaeo Heia, was Waipa Foundation. And we had legitimate questions from people that came more from the banking industry, right? If we make this investment, how is this going to help this student pass his math test? Show me an improvement in SAT scores, right? And the metrics were so hard to reach because of the multitudes of services that were being provided by some of these programs. So, Keli, when we look at Pai today, you see that was the opening image of our whole conference. 20 years ago when it was all mangrove and these guys were visionaries, not many people could see that. But maybe you want to talk about that, where the pond is today and how you guys got there. I mean, they have peer-reviewed research, students from all over the world, news studies, food system studies, all from their regenerative efforts way back in the day, relying on ancestral knowledge and wisdom.
I thought we were done when she went. She calls it on a tangent.
The magic.
The magic, it took over.
See, spontaneous.
I thought we were power. We'll sit down. Thank you for that, Natalie. That was awesome. That was really awesome. So to follow that, I think I really appreciated what Nita said earlier when she was talking about GSI companies, but just talking as being a local girl and talking about the little bit of the construct that she grew up in, like, local kids cannot, but we know can. Hiki no, we can do it. So I appreciated that she said that. And keeping that, whatever knowledge they're creating within her NHDC company, it's, big conglomerate, but they're focused on keeping that Ike home so that we can do it home here. And I think all of the work that we do comes from that foundation of knowing and we are wise because our kupuna subsisted here for thousands of years. And so we have that within us. Sometimes it takes a little bit of, kali'u o kapa'akai a little bit. You got to uncover, or like seeds or something. Sometimes you got to scratch the seed to get the plant to come out. Some kind of little disturbance needs to happen to awaken that seed, that sprout. And so for us, how that relates to us at Paepaeo He'eia and He'eia Fish Pond was just kind of a pretty cool cosmic gathering of forces of young Hawaiian studies students drawn together by beer and poke and powerful forces. But everybody, galvanized and wanting to do something and seeing our kumu and our mentors and people who are inspiring and pushing us and feeling that drive welling up within us at the same time as looking at what our fingertips could touch and imagining and dreaming. I like to use the metaphor that Kalei Nu'uhiwa uses, our wonderful Kilolani. She talks about pairing your ancestral DNA with your imagination. So pairing that which is already in you, it's flowing in you. Our kupuna, their ideas and their knowledge and their koko is still flowing in us. And bringing that to the surface and marrying that, pairing that with what your eyes are seeing, with what your hands are able to touch, and what you're able to dream in that space in the here and now. I feel like that's a lot of what is needed and is happening with this conference. And that's kind of where we were, was like, we didn't know exactly what this thing was inside us, calling us to pick up a chainsaw and just cutting down these mangroves that, we know it's bad. we don't know the full effects, but we know it's bad. Go get them. And we never really know where we was going. We just knew that there was this kind of nascent, bubbling, this aina, this local that was in dire need of help. And there were different for-profit ventures that had been tried. And for one reason or another, were no longer at our pond by the early 2000s. And now it was our turn to take the mantle or pick up the chainsaw. And we wanted to take it in a direction that was, again, inspired by our kumu, our mentors, Uncle Neil, Stacy and Kapua, and we took that and put that together with like our energy. Let's go, and we can do it. And so I think our success at He'eia Fish Pond is a reflection of not only many generations before us, but the generation right before us of He'eia and the residents. Little did we know when we were in our 20s, we thought we were trailblazing, but just like 20, 30 years before us, had a very strong and robust community fighting Kamehameha School. Because Kamehameha School was about to make some bad decisions for that loko'i'a, like they had at other loko'i'a around our islands. And so we didn't realize it as much at the time, and now I reflect back on it like, wow, we thought we were like trailblazing, and we were standing on their shoulders. They was the ones that did the work. It was just our turn next. And so what we've been able to accomplish is I will say amazing on behalf of our staff, but more so on behalf of the communities that have chosen to take up that mantle and that drive and bring that energy with them. So thousands of people per year help us out. And really, we don't have to, whether it's, you want to use the words, we don't have to sell our pond, we don't have to market our pond, we don't have to do TikTok and YouTube shorts and Instagram reels. We don't need to do that because the place inspires people. The space is what gives people mana. The space is regenerative. And the space is circular in that people feel when they give something to that place, they are more than double fold. It comes back to them more than twice, 3, 10 times, tenfold. And so we feel like our organization has just been a conduit to bring people to place and to create relationships. Like you talked about, our kupuna really having call it a circular economy, a mauna economy, based on relationships. Really, the currency and the value of what our kupuna did was based on relationships, and we are still learning. We're still becoming kama'aina to our ama in our pond. We're still trying to dial in what is their exact food resource. Or what is their diverse salad bar that our Hawaiian striped mullet, what is that they want to eat? And how can we be the best stewards, their best friends, even though we want to eat them. But really, in order for us to eat, and we don't eat very much right now because there's not enough of them. So we could just be extractive. We could just harvest until no more and then go move to the next fish pond. But that's not what we want. That's not the foundation that we learned from. We want to have a fish pond that's work at a fish pond today that has 800 years worth of history, and we want to help set a new foundation on top of the old foundation, a collaborative foundation that sets in motion another 800 years of productivity. And it's based on relationships, and we're still learning. We have a long way to go, but I think we're pushing to a space where we're allowing for conversation, just like in the agroforestry realm, allowing for conversations to happen that build up the work that people are doing today and help to answer the tough questions that need to be answered. Because there was no manual for our loko'i'a that we picked up in order to operate it today. And 100 years from now, whoever's operating our pond at that time is going to have to figure out solutions for their time because there will be new challenges. So long story short, we're moving. moving.
Mahalo. Yeah, and getting back to my age again, over the last 25 years, as a Kanaka, the debate was FEDRAC independence, right? And we had major scraps over that, intellectually, in communities, politically. But one of the major successes that I have seen, when I look back to when I was young and handsome and fit, is these guys, is all the aloha aina efforts across Hawaii, is the fish pond restoration, the lo'is, the dry land, the forests, that our generation has truly added something significant to Hawaii in that period. And so when I think about my youth, that's incredibly hopeful. And I never knew you guys could do it. Kanekoa Schultz, I don't know if Koa's here. Koa brought me to, he helped to start these guys, then he went Kako'oiwi. I remember him bringing me, to Heia, all overgrown. We hiked in, he said, "Oh, bro, I'm gonna set up something. I'm gonna make taro farmers and I'm gonna pay for the health insurance. We're gonna set up something that provides jobs for people that wanna farm taro and make imu." And I remember looking at him like, "Wow, bro, that's mean. How the hell are you gonna do that?" and Koa did it, he figured it out. So there's so much innovation that's happening in our communities, again, that we gotta see that pi'o, we gotta step back and see some of that. But Brandon, you work with our youth today. You've surveyed them, so what are you learning about, what are they hopeful for, and the kind of changes that they wanna see through your work?
Yeah, mahalo for the question. I mean, you guys probably know if you have keiki or if you're, you have networks that get you close to youth, they're demanding change, transformation, and it comes from a root paradigm. And they may not know the word circular economy or phrase, but I think they know that what's currently working or what's currently in place isn't working. And so for a lot of our work with our schools and our partners with the charter schools, it's really community-based, values-based change that they've been agitating for a long time. And I just want to say, you mentioned Pilina as being really important, and it's a privilege to work with Natalie. And I volunteered at Pai Pai when I was a grad student. Again, before I came to Kamehameha, I didn't know who owned the land. I just saw, like you said, some renegade Hawaiians doing some stuff, chainsaws, and he's not kidding. I mean, one tabi chainsaw, kind of the blade and the chain's hanging off. It's sort of like,
OSHA.
And that was in the commercial.
Back in the day.
Yeah.
Certified.
But the i'ini, the desire was so strong, and I just feel like the same thing you could see in the indigenous education movement, going all the way back to Kulakaiapuni, there were Native Hawaiian charter schools. It's trying to create citizens of place, really kupa'aina, right? Our kupuna would talk about kupa'aina as being, a native to a place, and being willing to fight for that place, be a protector, kia'i. So I do feel really strongly, I'm glad that they're able to speak about the direct work, whether it's the research or the actual stewardship that's happening. Because I think many of us know an olelo no iao that says, he ali'i ka'aina, he kawa ke kanaka, right? So the land is the chief and we are its servant. And aina is that and so much more. So I learned through a lot of our partners that, he kumu ka'aina, he haumana ke kanaka. Right? Like the land is also a teacher, and we can be its students. And I think the tremendous opportunity that we have when you look at a place like Paipai'ohei as being not just a fish pond, but a classroom, a laboratory, a library, a makerspace, all these different things. It's happening all at the same time. But what's at the core of it, I think the i'o, or the real meat of it, is aloha aina. So when I first heard of circular economy phrase, I think one of the quotes that helped me understand it was, with that mindset, everything should be healthy food for something else. So think about that, like, okay, whatever we have should be an input to something else, and not just an output that ends and becomes waste. And then when I think about kind of from an Ike Kupuna perspective, it's more about, we're advancing it, we're reestablishing it here in Hawaii, truly, because like you mentioned, it has been here. And I feel like our youth are in such an amazing position to advocate for that change. Like I said, they're demanding it. I mean, our kumu are having to catch up. I have to honor folks like Neil Hannes in the audience, Ulalia Woodside, Kamana Beamer, who I worked alongside with, taught me terms like ecosystem services, biocultural diversity, estuaries. And I just fell in love with it because at the end of the day, what I realized was like, okay, this is science kind of finding words and phrases for practices that I remember my kupuna, that I told you about George Ledward. He was a gardener, and the way he gardened in his yard was by moon cycles, was by feeling a na'au, and it's just amazing to see that continued. And so for folks who, I guess, have the privilege or opportunity to visit these sites, to be part of educational experiences that reawaken that i'ini, that desire, I feel like we have a strong platform to make the change. And this has happened within my lifetime, So I feel like that's a growing tide, and all of you, right, leaders of businesses, leaders of community, leaders of educators, innovators, I think are part of a bigger global wave of change that's kind of on the surface. So I agree, and I know we don't have time to talk about it, but I think in this conversation, we have to think about what success ultimately looks like. And going back to those metrics, another one of your graphs, your water cycle, right, you had makahiki, right, as being an important assessment. And those natural ways of observing the fitness of the people, the fatness of the land, right? You didn't have to stop, get off the bus, let me ask you questions. It's like, I'm just gonna go into your natural ceremonies and natural life cycles and observe and see if the regeneration is occurring, if equity is there, if growth and innovation is happening. So I feel like that's an opportunity for us to maybe advance the conversation is thinking about, what would be these new community-based, culture-based, place-based metrics of success that we want to see? Because when you talk about systems change, what I've learned, I think about it as, they talk about an iceberg, but I'll say volcano or a mauna. Think of a mauna. When you think about changing something as complex as a system, the top layer is really the policies and practices. Those are things that you can see. Oh, we got a new bill, or people are doing this practice. Those are important. A little bit deeper, down the cauldron is the resource flows and the power dynamics. When you start to see those things shift, then you probably have a lot more chance of having a sustainable systems change. And then lo and behold, at the bedrock, at the bottom of it, it's mindset. So really, at the end of the day, when you talk about systems change, it is dislodging or reimagining our mindsets, us getting unstuck, right? Getting back to being curious, being open, being aware to say that maybe I don't know what's right. And so we all have a role in playing that. Education's a big part of it, but like I said, it doesn't just happen in the classrooms. So yeah, thanks for that question.
Wow, Brandon. I think we have some time for some Q&A, and I want to get everyone some space. Brandon said something really provocative. I don't know if a student said this or you said this, but you said something like, how much does it matter if a student passes a math test if our aina is, not livable, right? And bridging those things. So want to open it up to community questions. Yes, it's Kumu Lilikala Kamele Hiva to start us off.
I'm so excited. Is this on? Hello? Can you hear me?
Not yet,
Yes.
not yet.
Okay.
Now we can hear you.
Now you can hear me? Okay. I love this. You guys are so fabulous. I just love it. We're about to start a new curriculum development center at Kamakaku'okalani Center for Hawaiian Studies. And I really would like to have a K through 12 curriculum on what you guys are doing so that by the time the kids are in high school, in every ahupua'a, they could become the kanahiki of those areas, whether they're Hawaiian or not or whatever. Because this is the greatest science in the world, right? This is the ancestors coming forward to teach us. And so, you guys, let's work together on this. And by the way, did you know? Fish love to be eaten by good people. I can prove it. I have the sources for that. Thank you. And I like eat some fish from that pond.
Okay.
Mahalo.
Oh, you.
Wow. Okay, so we have a collaboration in effect. Other questions from the audience? Yes. I'm colorblind too, as well as old, but I think that's pink. I think it's a pink jacket.
Hi, my name's Robin Knox. I live on Maui. We're doing a lot of wetland restoration, and our wetlands in Kulakai, also known as Kihei, are at the bottom of these large watersheds that have been desertified, and there are 3 huge fish ponds at the foot of these wetlands. And that's really our vision, is to see those fish ponds restored. So how do I get started with the fish pond part?
Awesome.
Great question. Mahalo. I probably one of the best ways would be, Kamana had mentioned their name earlier, and you can connect to me later on and through Kamana, but Kamana mentioned the name of an organization called KUA, Kua Aina Ulua Wamo, and they are a small powerhouse of people that are helping to allow communities across Hawaii to do what they want to do. And they help to manage different networks of community practitioners to discuss and do what they need to do. They manage an organization or a association of statewide fish ponds, and we're a part of it. And I think I can get you in touch with the coordinator of that. Coming up in June, we have a conference over in Waihe'e of all the fish ponds from across the state that are under active restoration are going to be gathering in Waihe'e next June. So we'll be on your island. So you can come and talk story, and that's really what it boils down to is, creating relationships with people and kind of getting ideas and talking about problems and seeing what kind of solutions are out there. So we just got to connect. We just got to create a relationship. We just got to start off. And then I think one thing also important, as we're talking about the circularity and seasonality of things, you mentioned the desertification and the entire ahupua'a in that location where you have those ponds. Think about all of that in terms of restoration, and not just the fish ponds in isolation. That's how we started, and that's where most people start, because you only can kind of take care of what you can. It's gotta eat a cow in small bite-sized pieces. You don't eat the whole cow. You one hamburger bite at a time, right? One steak bite. So you obviously chew what you can, but our loko'i are reflections of the health of ahupua'a and the health of the system. So try as we might our darndest to just stay within our walls. Our pond will never be as productive unless we work with our Kako'oiwi partners across the street and Papahana Kua'ola and the residents that live in our ahupua'a and the Board of Water Supply that has the control to the valve, to the wells, water coming out of our mountain. So it is holistic in terms of restoration. So just start thinking about that as well. Yeah, mahalo.
Can I add just one thing to it?
Yes.
First spot. I just loved Lily Kala's comment about curriculum and then the work happening. And there's so much opportunity for certifications and apprenticeships in this space. So how do you learn how to operate a native Hawaiian fish pond, right? I mean, we have folks who learned on the go, right? And you have these networks. And we have classes, right? So looking at that kind of career development and, say native Hawaiian fish pond operator, biocultural restoration technician, right? Kind of synonymous. And I think there's so many opportunities with the people in this audience, because we have innovators, we have community folks, business folks, to really say that's what we need. That's the type of workforce we want and we have. And I know that is taking place in some sectors. We can do so much more of it. That gives me a lot of hope. Because again, I got kids, right? I want them to live and work here.
Yeah.
We're
Right on.
starting that at Pu'ahala, the new high school that's coming up.
Yeah.
I'm an advisor to them, and I go once a month. But to train those kids on how to take water from the stream and see what's in there, and be able to report it back to somebody. So that's the first thing is looking at the water, making sure the water is clean. Pu'ahala in
Exciting. See what works on it.
I think we have time for maybe one more question, and I saw I love you, Mike. I want to get to you, but I saw brother's hand first. And Mike was a commissioner with me. We're not in an intimate relationship, just so you know. Yes.
Aloha. Dirk Soma from Hawaiʻi Community College. It's interesting when you use the CE for circular economy, we use it for cultural entrepreneur. And one of the perspectives that we take when we're teaching entrepreneurship is that this cultural entrepreneur operates within a 4P business model. And that fourth P, people, planet, profit, and pono. And it's all about honoring and perpetuating the values of that community in which you're doing business. So we use the aupua as our business model that students utilize going forward. So my question is, we're doing all this great work in Aina-based learning and Aina-based production. How do we now integrate these innovators into the economy so that they are producing and productive and sustaining themselves and then growing that next level of business? What are some words of wisdom that you might have?
I can say a few things. I know that at Kamehameha Schools, I work on the natural and cultural stewardship team, and we're always looking for vendors. So a lot of our work that we do across 370,000 acres across the Pai'aina is done by contractors. And it is Malama Aina work. It ranges from weed management, forest stewardship, fence building, archaeological surveys, to water quality monitoring, all the whole gamut. And we don't have enough vendors, and we definitely don't have enough Native Hawaiian vendors. And so I think if there are opportunities for these up and coming folks to develop their own businesses and go for some of this work, there's like a multitude of jobs that could be born from them taking on that kuleana to then employ others in this work. I think there's no shortage of work in those fields, and I think we need to also, like, as a provider or a payer of those services, we need to think about what pays a living wage. And I think some organizations are willing to pay a premium to vendors and contractors who share our values, who come from this place, who do want to hire locally and produce that vai within these islands.
Yeah, and maybe if I could just add a little bit to that too. I think there's the policy side to this. So, like, the green fee is something that has come up in the ledge multiple times, hasn't come through. We have to understand the extractive nature of some industries on our resources, and we have to find ways to reinvest in our Aina and in our place. And so I think, a lot of we can have policy developments to better support these kinds of efforts, as well as innovation kind of in the circular economy space. Food waste is a huge one. There was some innovation happening in Sitar here in Hawaii, trying to get, where we know from, farm to table. Peter Merrimans and others really highlighted that. And then how do we go from, the waste back to the farm? So the food waste from the restaurant back to the farm. And with some policy innovations and stuff, and not allowing people just to dump waste in certain ways, like, we can have spaces for, I think, some of this innovation to take place. But mahalo for sharing your work, and so important to plant those seeds with the youth and get them thinking about your form of the CE. So I think we're actually just about out of time. Mike, is it a quick one, or do you want to hold?
No, it's a big one.
It's a big one. Okay, so we'll hold that. So just some framing. So, this panel, the next panel, is really about the ancestral circular economy. You're going to hear about innovations. Uncle Neil Hannes, Professor Kapua Sproat, Noah Lincoln, Kamu are going to lead that. And then we're going to go into a talk from Kate Rayworth, a little more international perspective. And Kavika will come bring in Heia, and then we'll get international again, and then kind of have our closing. So it's kind of going to stretch our minds a little bit to jump from this ancestral circular economy to, the context across the European continent, but hold that space together, see the PO, Mahalo nui for being here. And how about a hand for our incredible panel?